I'd like to call to order the hearing for the municipality of Monroe, Township, Wyoming County, Pennsylvania. This hearing is March 6th. The Chief Gathering LLC, Chapin Dehydration Facility, Monroe Township, conditional use zoning permit application. At this time, I have to go over some housekeeping items. Like Paul said, all people need to sign in. The rear table, restrooms are at the rear of the building if anybody needs that facility. This time I'd like to introduce Paul Litwin, our solicitor, Mick Goodwin, our engineering representative for Mills Engineering, Jerry Woods, zoning officer, Arlene Traver, secretary treasurer of Monroe Township, Walter Durhammer, township supervisors, roadmaster, Dale Wright, vice chairman, supervisor, and myself, I'm Chairman William Patton, supervisor of Monroe Township. At this time, I would like to turn the hearing over to our solicitor, Paul Litwin.
Thank you. Before we begin, and this is the first time I think the supervisors are hearing this too, but this hearing may be a bit of a bit futile. Act 13, which was passed by the legislature, supersedes most zoning with respect to oil and gas. And in this case, it makes what Chief has applied for a principal permitted use in an agricultural district. By state law, it's a principal permitted use. That takes effect April 14th of this year. And we have to amend our ordinance or not eligible to get any of the impact fees that the county approved, I think, last week. So regardless of what we do here today, if this is denied, effective April 14th, this type of use is a principal permitted use in an agricultural district. So I don't know if that affects anybody's questions we have, that you may have, but just to let everybody know that. And again, that wasn't our choice. That was imposed upon us, so for what it's worth. We're here today for a hearing on the conditional use application filed by Chief Gathering Energy LLC for the development of a compressor station, metering station, and operation maintenance facility in a rural agricultural district in Monroe Township. Section 1208.5 of the Monroe Township zoning ordinance provides that the Board of Supervisors shall conduct hearings and make decisions in accordance with Section 908 and 913.2 of the municipality's planning code. In granting a conditional use, the Board of Supervisors may attach such reasonable conditions and safeguards, in addition to those expressed in the ordinance, as it determines are necessary to implement the purposes of the MPC and the zoning ordinance and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. As a preliminary matter, if anybody is interested in being a party to this action, that would potentially give you standing in an appeal, and it will certainly give you the ability to question any of the witnesses tonight or offer your own testimony. I'd ask that you come forward and fill out one of these entry of appearance forms. Anyone else interested in becoming a party to this proceeding? No one else? The rules with respect to a party in this proceeding are the municipality, any person affected by the application who has made a timely entry of appearance of record before the board, and any other person, including civic or community organization, permitted to appear by the board. If the applicant questions your standing, they'll have an opportunity on the record to question you, and the board will determine whether or not you have standing under that standard. Okay, before we begin, just to get the notice out of the way. On February 15, 2012, Joseph Levi Hoyt was mailed notice. Joseph S. Hoyt and Pamela Sue Hoyt. Gail Tereska. Is John here? I mispronounced your name last time. I don't want to get it wrong again.
Mokichek.
John McKeechek. Holly Lambert. Mark Ide. Here's another one. Henrik. Is there a Henrik present?
Yeah,
Your last name, sir?
Henrik Strelitz.
Thank you. Carl Smith, Jr. Marlene Cadlock. And of course the applicant, Jerry Scott and Julia A. Scott. Ruth Vasquez. James Harkins and Elizabeth Harkins. Rebecca Patton. Brian T. Good and Barbara Good. Peter Calkins. And I would note that Ruth Vasquez's notice was returned to sender. The legal notice was advertised on February 22nd, 2012 and February 29th, 2012 in the New Age Examiner. Called Jerry Woods.
So the testimony you give Mr. Singham is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but something else?
Yes, I do. Posted the properties on Sunday the 26th.
And where did you post the property?
The properties that you just mentioned there.
Okay.
On the proposed site,
Okay. How many postings did you make?
26.
26 postings around the property? Okay. Okay, I know there was another entry of appearance somebody wanted to submit. The first is from Barbara A. Good. She's a neighbor. I believe she has standing on behalf of living, or because she lives next door to the project. But if Chief would like to question her on it.
What municipality does she reside in?
Her address is 570 Old Highway Road, Dallas, PA.
Does she reside in Monroe Township?
Our property is contiguous to this property. We live in Dallas Township.
We live in Dallas Township. And we would object to standing based upon having no ownership interest in Monroe Township.
Okay. The other entry of appearance? Is that Jerry Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
What municipality?
I'm in Dallas Township.
The Dallas Township resident. Again, Chief would assert an objection based upon no ownership interest in lands within Monroe Township.
Mr. Scott, where's your property located? Is it adjacent?
My property borders that, and part of the property is being used as a road to access that,
Okay.
not by my consent.
Okay. If the supervisors want to just discuss this for a minute, we'll be back in a second. Okay, we'll reconvene.
Attorney, before the board makes a decision just on this topic, I'd just like to submit into evidence, regardless of the ruling, a memorandum which cites some legal authority on behalf of the chief addressing the standing issue, if I may.
And on the record, this was emailed to me earlier, I think maybe yesterday.
Yes.
And I did circulate it among the board members.
Front yard, I saw it on.
Have you reached a decision with respect to these two?
This is on the county line and right on the township line. And I believe these two parties should have the right to testify of what their feelings are. I mean, it's right there next door to one another. It's not that this project's out in the middle of the Monroe Township. It's right on the property line and township line, county line. I'll make a motion they have the right to testify.
I'll second that.
I'll agree.
Okay.
Just as long as my objection is noted on the record.
Your objections noted, and we have a copy of your memo.
And that's a continuing objection with any type of testimony offered by those two parties.
Understood. Because this is a hearing and transcripts are being made, only one person may speak at a time. At this time, we'll ask the applicant to proceed with his testimony and evidence. After that, the supervisors may have some questions. After the supervisors ask questions, persons that have entered appearance may ask questions. For those two individuals, raise your hand and I'll call on you just so we can do it in an orderly fashion. And then following Chief's presentation, if either of you would like to make your own presentation or provide testimony with respect to the project, you'll have an opportunity to do that, and you'll also be questioned following your testimony, or potentially be questioned. Any questions from anybody before we start this process?
Based upon the testimony provided by the other two party participants, Chief will have an opportunity to rebut if they so choose.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Okay, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Malik. I represent Chief Gathering. With me this evening, I have two representatives of the Chief. To my left is Nick Bryan, who's the environmental manager for Chief Gathering. And I also have with me Steve Hamilton, who's the operations manager for Chief Gathering. We are here this evening with regard to the dehydration and metering facility, as well as an accessory commercial communication device with regard to property owned by the Chapins or the Chapin property. Just as a procedural posture of the matter, besides my memo on standing, I also would like to submit a memorandum that was submitted to Attorney Litwin with regard to some overall case authority with regard to conditional uses. That was circulated, I believe, before the last hearing, February 9th, 2012. I also would move into evidence at this time if permissible, or at least note the current application of Chief Gathering for this facility, which generated the necessity of this hearing.
Okay, received.
Okay. If I may, I'm going to have two witnesses, and it's up to the board. The primary witness will be Nick Bryan, but I also have Steve Hamilton. Would you prefer me taking them two at a time, or would you prefer both being sworn in and perhaps Steve buttressing Nick's testimony if needed?
Why don't we do them one at a time, just to make it clear?
Very good. The first witness I'd like to call is Nick Bryan.
I swear to God, because I didn't say that. Swear the testimony you give us proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
And Nick, is it permissible with the board if Nick, when you start speaking regarding the project, stands up and points out to maybe some of the locations of the project and for the board? Is that permissible?
Absolutely.
So Nick, anytime you feel like you want to stand up, or you can stand up now for the board. Can you please state your name for the board?
Nicholas J. Bryan.
And how are you employed?
I am employed by Chief Gathering as environmental manager.
Are you familiar with the Chief Gathering Chapin Dehydration Facility?
Yes, I am.
How have you been involved in the project?
I was the designer for the project with McTish Kunkel Associates.
And you have worked with Chief and with other projects similar to this in Pennsylvania, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And how many such projects have you worked on?
9.
And you're familiar with Chief's current pending conditional use zoning permit application, but currently pending before the Board of Supervisors.
I am.
Have you reviewed and are you familiar with the provisions of the Monroe Township, Eaton Township zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Does Chief have a surface easement to utilize the Chapin property for the construction of such a facility?
Yes, they have an approximate 8-acre easement.
In Chief's application, they're requesting a conditional use to construct, develop, and operate a natural gas dehydration metering facility.
That's right.
And can you give the Board of Supervisors perhaps just an overview of the project, what structures will be there, what the purpose of the project is?
Sure. Give me 1 second. Okay, the general purpose of this facility is gas will be coming into the facility from our facilities located in the north. The gas basically will come in and be dehydrated. When the gas comes into the facility, it has water entrained with the gas, which needs to be removed from the gas prior to moving it to market. An additional function of this site is that it will also add mercaptan to the gas prior to being sent down the line, as well as being metered. The site is located off of Herdman Road, about 1/10 of a mile from the intersection of Old Tunkhannock Road to the north. There's a proposed access road that's approximately 200 feet in length that extends to the approximate 2-acre pad that will contain the facilities. The pad will include a 6-foot-high chain link fence with 3-strand barbed wire on top. The site will be gated at the entrance to prevent unauthorized access. Contained on the pad of the facility will be 2 thermal oxidizers. There will be odorant storage tanks, an odorant expansion tank, communications tower not to exceed 100 feet in height, an associated RTU building. An RTU building is the building that controls communication that's coming from the tower. The odorant building, which regulates the injection of the odorant. The MCC building, which is generally the master control. It contains a flow control skid and a metering skid where the gas is metered. Other facilities located on the site is a pig launcher and receiver. Pig launchers and receivers are as piping and mechanisms that allow Chief's operators of the pipeline to perform maintenance operations of the line. You'll hear people refer to pigging the line. They actually put a device into the line that forces out any water that may have come out of the gas or laid in the low spots, and forces that out to be collected to ensure that there's no corrosion occurring in the pipe. And it also can be used to monitor the integrity of the steel and for Chief to monitor the overall condition of the pipe. Also, there are separators. Their basic function is to remove particulates that would be in the gas as well. And also, there will be 6 350-barrel tanks with containments. Those tanks store the water that is removed out of the air through the dehydration process. And also 2 glycol dehydrators. The site is graded and designed to drain to the east, northeast, to a centralized stormwater management basin with proposed maintenance access for any routine maintenance for the site. The site will be landscaped around the exterior with a combination of 2-foot-high shrubs and 6-foot-high evergreens. Along the southern property line, the existing tree row will be maintained to provide a natural screening to the south of the project. The site lighting will consist of building mounted lights, no pole mounted lighting for security purposes only. That lighting will be shielded such that there will not be a throw that would provide glare or disperse glare onto adjoining properties.
Nick, you described many of the structures and buildings and what their uses are. Is there also going to be an accessory communication tower?
Yes, there will.
And if I can just refocus, we try to focus more on the Monroe Township. And the dehydration metering facility, is it included under the permitted uses described under the Monroe Township zoning ordinance as compression stations, metering stations, operation maintenance facilities, is that correct?
Yes.
We're not going to have, Chief is not going to have a compression station at this facility, is that correct?
Right. Correct.
Does the proposed use meet all local, state, and federal requirements?
It will.
Has Chief submitted all the informational requirements as required under section 827.3 of the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And one of the items, I believe, was lighting when you were getting into that. Can you explain for the board again, there will be lighting at the facility?
There will be lighting. The lighting will be building mounted, downward shielded to prevent any glare from shining off-site.
Okay. And the application, this was submitted to Monroe Township's engineer, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've worked closely with the township engineer?
Yes, I have.
And the township engineer, I think, had submitted a letter to you, to the Monroe Township Board of Supervisors dated January 13th, 2012. Are you familiar with that letter?
Yes, I am.
And I believe there are 5 pages, I think it's a 5-page letter, where the engineer for the township offered various comments with regard to the revised submission by Chief. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And many of the items on this list I'm seeing is that no further action is required. Does that mean that Chief complied with the request of the township engineer?
Yes.
I'd also like at this time to move into evidence and part of the record, the January 13th, 2012 engineering letter.
Received.
Has Chief, now specifically some of the issues addressed in the engineering letter, if we can just go ahead and put them on the record. Has Chief met all of the yard and buffer area requirements under section 701.1 of the ordinance?
Yes, they have.
And do you remember what those requirements were or how Chief has met them?
Yes, it required a 25-foot landscape buffer, which has been adhered to, and it also included 200-foot setbacks from property lines, 300-foot setbacks from existing structures, and 200-foot setback from water bodies, all of which have been complied with.
Very good. And you mentioned the landscaping requirements. I believe there's a separate section of the ordinance. Has Chief met all of the landscaping requirements under section 701.2 of the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And they've done so by the method you just described?
Yes.
One of the requirements under section 701.4 deals with fire and explosion hazards. Has Chief successfully identified those issues for Monroe Township and consistent with its application?
Yes, we have, and in doing so, we developed an integrated SPCC plan and PPC plan, which outlines procedures for emergency response, how our first responders are to respond, how our operators are to respond, police, any of the other emergency management personnel. That plan will be posted at the site. The Kunkel Fire Department will also have a copy, which I have subsequently, myself and other representatives of Chief have met with Jack Dodson and the representing Kunkel Fire Department, discussed and reviewed our proposed operation with them.
Let's step back for the board. You mentioned 2 types of plans, the SPCC plan. Can you explain to the board what that is?
The SPCC plan is the Spill Prevention and Countermeasures Control Plan. Basically, it identifies response methods and procedures for spills specifically, and also overall response to the facility in the event of emergency. It contains contact information of all the local emergency management agencies, chief personnel, anyone pertinent that would need to be contacted in the event of emergency.
And you also mentioned a PPC plan.
Yes, a pollution prevention and control plan. That's generally related to activities during the earth disturbance portion of the project, where obviously there are fuel, hydraulic oil, those sorts of things that are on site present and included with any type of typical construction that would guide the individuals on site how to control a spill in the event that there was one.
And the SPCC plan and the PPC plan, those were required under section 701.4 of the ordinance, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe in the engineer's letter, you submitted such integrated SPCC and PPC plans, is that correct?
Yes, we did.
And did the engineer find those satisfactory?
Yes.
And I'm reading the notes from the engineer, one of the items they stated with a qualification was that they found it acceptable provided that the local first responders have no additional concerns relative to the application. Did you meet with the first responders?
Yes.
And did they specifically address anything that they wanted you to change on the SPCC or the PPC plan?
No, they had no comment.
And part of Chief's application, one of the requirements was to submit a project narrative under section 701.3. Did Chief do that?
Yes, we did, in an outline.
So what is a project narrative? What did it encompass? What did it entail?
The project narrative outlined all the things that I had spoke on regarding access, site lighting, landscaping, security, vehicular traffic, the equipment located on site.
Great. And were any comments received back after the project narrative was submitted by anybody from Monroe Township, from the board, or from the engineer?
No.
Okay. And you had mentioned that you met with the first responders. Did you meet with them once, or did you meet with them multiple times?
We had met once in mid-January.
Okay. And will Chief meet with them as the project continues?
Yes, we will. In the event, at the time that the station becomes operational, Chief will ensure that the first responders have that they have an opportunity to go on site, see the facilities firsthand. We generally provide tours to the local officials and the first responders, so they have a firsthand understanding of what is included with the facility.
So Chief works closely with first responders in projects such as this?
Yes.
And Chief will agree to work with the first responders in this project as well?
Absolutely.
One of the other requirements under section 701.6 of the zoning ordinance was pre-construction ambient noise testing data. Did Chief comply with that provision of the ordinance?
Yes, we collected pre-construction noise information and submitted that to the township.
Will there be any detectable vibrations from the facility?
No.
Why not?
Generally, the facility does not have any motorized components or anything of that nature that would be a source for noise or vibration. The site generally consists of gas flowing through piping and valves.
Okay. Under another section, section 70.110, with regard to emissions and odors, everything will be done in accordance with Pennsylvania DEP rules and regulations with regard to odors and emissions. Is that correct?
That's right.
And will Chief operate the site plan in accordance with the stormwater management and soil erosion control plan?
Yes, they will.
And will a copy of the erosion and sediment control general permit and ESCG BP1 be submitted to the township?
Yes, it will. It's currently under review.
And who's reviewing this right now?
DEP in Williamsport.
Another section required for conditional use is found under section 701.17 and addresses the topic of security. Can you tell the board, you may have mentioned before with the fencing, but please provide the board with information on the security that will be at the facility?
Again, the perimeter of the site will be completely fenced with 6-foot-high chain link fence with 3-strand barbed wire on top. In addition, the facility will include security cameras that are pointed at various locations of the site that are monitored remotely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anything out of the ordinary that occurs at the facility will be immediately reported to the appropriate chief personnel for response and/or notification of police.
But this facility will be monitored 24 hours, 7 days a week, is that correct?
That's right.
Another section of the zoning ordinance talks about water supply. Will water supply facilities be necessary for the site?
No, they won't.
And why not?
The site is an unmanned facility. There is no need for public water at the facility. The supervisors had previously requested in the original meeting that we consult with Kunkel Fire Department to ensure that water supply would not be necessary for fire protection.
And did you do that?
I did.
And what was the result of that?
Mr. Dodson had indicated that Kunkel Fire Department has adequate water supply for fire protection as part of their dispatch and would not be needed.
Along with the water supply, will there be any sewage disposal facilities at the site?
No.
Has Chief agreed to comply with all the posting and bonding requirements of the township?
Yes, I believe bonds are in place for all access roads, and also our driveway permit for the site has been secured.
And have they been forwarded to the township?
I believe the township has copies of them. They were all township approvals.
Another section, section 827.1B, describes a landscape buffer, and you may have mentioned it before, of 25 feet. Will this section be complied with by Chief?
Yes.
Another section of the zoning ordinance, section 827.1C, describes access routes and road conditions. Can you please provide the board with a description as to what access routes and road conditions that will be utilized at the facility?
Yeah, generally access will be via Herdman Road or Old Mechanic Highway. All the existing road conditions as part of our bonding process have been pre-recorded, I believe, through videotape, documenting their existing condition as.
And those roads are satisfactory for access to the facility?
Yes.
I believe that Chief was requested to put signage, or will signage be at the facility?
Yeah, there'll be one freestanding sign. I supplied pictures to the board members. Generally, it's approximate 4x8 sign that will be posted out at the entrance. It'll include things such as access authorization, personnel only, obviously, safety precautions. It'll indicate contact numbers and the name of the facility and the address of the facility. Any personal protective equipment that needs to be in place prior to entry. General safety information.
And you mentioned before, I believe, that there's going to be a fence around the facility?
Yep.
And will there be signs mounted on the fencing?
Yeah, there'll be an additional signs, small signs mounted at the entryway as well. At that location, there generally will be safety information about PPE and those types of things. And also the SPCC plan and integrated PPC plan will be located on the fence at that location outside the facility for reference for future or first responders.
So first responders will have access to the emergency plans that were prepared by Chief with all the numbers?
Yes.
Okay. One of the other requests besides the dehydration and metering facility the Chief is requesting is a cellular tower. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the cellular tower is required to strike that. The zoning ordinance requires that a response or a narrative be submitted in accordance with section 809.3 with regard to a proposed communications tower. Has Chief complied with that section?
That's correct.
So you have submitted a response narrative in accordance with that section.
Yes.
And can you just please tell the board maybe a brief description of what the tower is used for and where it will be located on the plan?
Yes, the tower will be located at the southern center of the site, approximately right here, if all can see that. The tower, as I said, 100 foot in height, has been set back, provided that in the event that it were to unfortunately or unexpectedly fall down, there's adequate buffer, would not affect any of the adjoining property owners or any of the other facilities outside of those contained within the fenced area. The purpose of the tower is to relay gas rate and condition data to Williams Transco. This tower is a requirement of Williams Transco and will be operated by them on this site.
So that's important to point out. So this is not cheap. This is one of the Transco requirements of a cellular tower.
That's right.
And can Chief please describe the height of the proposed tower?
The proposed height of the tower is not to exceed 100 feet.
Okay. And you had mentioned some of the rate setbacks. Does it meet all the setback requirements under the zoning ordinance?
It does.
And will there be fencing around the tower?
Yes, it will be contained within the perimeter fencing of the site.
It will contain all of the proper landscaping as required under the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
What about the licenses, regulations, insurance?
All licenses, regulations, and insurance, Chief will fully comply with.
And will Chief submit a site plan for the tower?
Yes, at the time that, for building codes purposes, a engineered foundation drawing and associated facility will be provided to the township as part of the building codes process as required.
And Chief is working with other owners of communication towers in the area, is that correct?
Yes, we are working with other existing facilities in the area.
So there's a possibility that the tower may not have to be at this location at that height, but we don't know at this point, is that correct?
That's accurate. We are in discussions, as I said, with other existing facility owners in the area, and we are trying to minimize the height required of that facility on this site.
But just for the board right now, Chief is requesting a not to exceed height of 100 feet?
That's right.
And just some general compliance questions. Will the operations at the facility comply with all applicable local, state, and federal regulations?
Yes.
Did Chief submit all the required informational documents required under the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Chief will work with first responders in the area before construction begins?
Yes.
In conclusion, does Chief believe all of the requirements have been met in order to obtain a conditional use for a dehydration facility consistent with the Monroe Township zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And one last question. Attorney Litwin referred to it before, but under new Act 13, would this be a permitted use under the new Act 13?
Yes, it would.
I do not have any further questions right now, Mr. Bryan.
Okay. I guess the way we'll do questions is the board will ask first, and then the two parties, if they have any. And actually, for the two parties, I need you to state on the record, so you'll have to be sworn in, just where you reside. That part of your statements before weren't on the record, or weren't under oath. Nick Goodwin, the township engineer on behalf of the board, has a few questions. And then if the supervisors or zoning officers has any.
Relative to your discussion, of course, we did the review of your plans and your narrative information and commented accordingly, but probably more so for the people here and for the board to hear, relative to your SPCC and your PPC plan, what are, in generality, what's the safety protocol? If there's an event on your site, where is it monitored? You talked about 24/7. Is that a local location? Is that a Houston-based location or some other location? And how quickly do they respond?
That is a Dallas-based response location. However, that notification goes out to all the local operators in the area. Chief Our general protocol is that we hire someone local to the area, local being less than 30 minutes without a doubt in response time to the facility. Those folks are on call, as I said, 24/7 in response to these types of events.
Do you have automatic valving in the case of a need for an immediate shutdown? Is that possible remotely?
Yes, I believe so. And also there are ESDs located on site for the quick shutdown and blowdown of the system.
For the odorant, the mercaptan that's going to be added, when you add new odorant to those tanks, how are you handling? Are you going to flare the excess in those tanks? Or are you going to do that with some other carbon absorption? Or?
There will be a flare associated with handling that mercaptan. Steve Hamilton, who is with us this evening, who is our operations manager, may be able to more adequately address some of your questions specific to the operation of the facility.
Is that an event that the first responders are notified of before it happens, or does it?
Yes, any activities such as that, we would make proper notifications to them, so when calls begin to come in, they already are aware of our proposed activity.
With some of the recent startups of some of these similar type facilities, there's been some issues with the blowdown. There's been some issues with releasing pressure on a hydrostatic test. In a situation like this, is there how often are the lines, for lack of a better term, pigged? I mean, how often are they inspected, and do you control that release so it doesn't scare the heck out of the neighbors, I guess is.
I have to defer this to Steve, the operation.
Again, not sure about relevance here, but is there a chance that some of these facilities will not be permanent? In other words, they'll be moved to another location when you get other approvals?
No, this facility will be.
And we're approving it or acting upon it as if it's permanent, so it really doesn't matter. But
yes.
It would be nice to understand that. I don't understand. No further.
Board members?
I have one question with the properties of natural gas. If you would have like a line break there, is that density of that, will that spread low to the ground to the neighboring facilities, or?
No, natural gas is lighter than air, so in the event that there is a rupture, it automatically releases to atmosphere and dissipates the hazard. Once the station is shut in or the area is isolated, that gas that's actually a good thing from a safety standpoint, that it is lighter and it does release and dissipate.
So,
not conversely with propane or heavy gases that sink to low-lying areas.
Propane, I know, so basically it will rise in a column versus spread.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, question I have.
I have a question. What's the length of construction for this site, start to finish? 6 weeks, a month?
Overall site construction, I would assume will probably be done in less than 2 months, or approximately thereabout, depending on weather conditions and things like that may impact some of our grading activities. Equipment placement and things such as that, Steve may be able to better answer how long it will take. I apologize, I'm not familiar with that aspect of construction.
That's all I have.
Well,
I don't have nothing.
okay, before Mr. Scott and Mrs. Good, before you ask your questions, would you mind raising your hand and would you swear him in, Mark, please?
Swear the testimony given in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Mr. Scott, would you mind, again, letting everyone know where you live?
I live at 519 Old Highway Road. My property adjoins and is contiguous with the property where this power plant is going to be, or this compressor station. The stone wall and the trees are actually on my property, and I had some questions about how close it was going to be to the property.
Okay, you get a chance to ask your questions in a
Okay.
second. I just want to get this on the record.
Okay.
And you live in Dallas Township?
Yes.
Mrs. Good, same questions. Your address?
570 Old Highway Road.
Okay, and you also live in Dallas Township?
Yes.
Okay.
And Attorney Litman, just our objection with regard to standing is noted. With regard to these two. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Good, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. I have several questions. When you were talking about the PPC plan, and the SPCC plan, I was going to request copies since we live right by this. But for the immediate time, I was curious, who's going to be the first responders?
First responders being our local fire department, which Kunkel Fire Department covers that area.
Even if it crosses the county line, they'll still be...
That's right, as far as I understand from my conversations with Mr. Dodson, who is in the audience.
Okay. So are we able to request a copy of both of those plans?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I
they
will
will
have my address.
And just to clarify, we will provide the township with a copy. The fire company will have a copy. Actually, Mr. Dodson and I discussed, we provided them with a digital copy so that all of their responding vehicles and things like that would have a copy in some kind of a binder or booklet for their quick reference, that they wouldn't have to go up to the facility to find that or run over to the township building when it's closed. The fire company will have that in hand, and absolutely.
But we'll also be able to?
Yes, I can provide you with a copy of it.
Okay. Now, what triggers an emergency notification? Like, that system would automatically trigger? Like, can it sense the gas odor, or what exactly can we count on that thing to notify
I'll try to
about?
generally answer your question, and again, Steve could probably do a much better job at this. But generally, the pressures in the lines are monitored constantly. So anytime that there may be a fluctuation in that pressure, that would be an indication to the operators that there may be some kind of a malfunction or something like that that would need addressed, or that the station would need to be shut down.
So would Steve be able to answer the question of if there is a remote shut-off then? You said you thought so?
Yes, he could.
Okay. Is it part of Chief's protocol to alert the nearby residents, or are we going to have to count on the township and the first responders? Like, how are we notified if something's happening? Because we're right there. So are we going to have to rely on everyone else to tell us that something's happening? Or are we part of the response plan since we live right there?
Our response plan is generalized. I'm not sure how the response works from, just to be clear, we will have activities that we know about. Activities such as maintenance and things like that, where you may hear something or you may see something on site that may be questionable. At that point, the local emergency management, Kunkel Fire Department will be notified, Luzerne County EMA, the 911 center will notify all these people so that there'll be when the call comes in, there won't be some alarm and everybody's in a panic. I'm unsure of the notification to adjoining property owners.
Could we request that there is?
I would see why not.
Then who would we request that from?
I guess of the board.
I mean, because my concern is that we're relying on a remote thing, or the township or the first responders to tell us if something's happening. And if we were, part of the notification process, we wouldn't need to wait for all that if there were an issue.
Yeah, I believe that that the adjoining landowners could be notified and would be notified immediately in the event that there's an issue.
Okay, so I'm making a request for that then. A lot of my questions, I'm just gonna have to look through them because a lot of them had to do with the ordinances and what, and you're saying that now those don't apply, right? Like the 1208.4.
After April 14th, we can enforce anything that's inconsistent with Act 13.
Okay, but I could still ask the question just for the sake of being living next to the thing, right?
Sure.
Okay.
And if they agree to it, we could make it a condition, and
Well, I do have a conditions of approval that I was hoping to submit at the end. So I can do that anyway, but if that's all right. Is that what you mean?
yeah, but right now you ask your questions, then you have a
Right,
chance
yeah,
to testify
yeah.
and make requests. And
What is the radius that would be considered to be a hot zone where people wouldn't respond?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Will groundwater be monitored for leaks from the facility?
Not to my knowledge, no, groundwater will not be.
How about air quality, like for carcinogens or?
Yes, air quality permits require continual monitoring of the discharges, and those reports and that data is routinely collected by DEP and administered by them.
So would we have to request that from DEP, like if we wanted an update or?
I believe that it is public information when it is at DEP.
Okay.
Any type of permit from any permits with regard to the air will be available at Monroe Township, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, we are required to submit a copy of approvals to the township.
I mean, like, once it is being monitored, if there was some concern
Sure.
of air quality, then we would have to check periodically, or we would be notified?
You would not be notified.
Okay, so we would need to check periodically? My questions now pertain to the ordinance 1208.4, and I'm still going to ask them because I think they pertain to your water flow and sediment plan. I forget how all it was, but I was wondering if you're aware that the water flow that develops during the times of heavy rain, along the Beaumont Acres dirt road that's up above where the proposed site is. The gully that runs alongside Beaumont Acres Road is normally like a dry creek, but it runs pretty fiercely when we do have heavy rains, to the point that Dallas Township workers on occasion have had to bring heavy equipment to remove the sediment and to help the water flow. And at that time, that water flows down into that field, and in recent times has been like a creek without banks. That's how fiercely water will flow from that gully into that field where you're talking about. So I didn't know if, because Dallas Township tends to be who comes and brings the heavy equipment, etc. Now I don't know what you consider heavy equipment, but equipment to move the debris or the sediment, the water, etc., that you were aware that happens.
As a design engineer, I have evaluated anything that would be coming from upstream of the site, coming to my site, and as part of the design, I have constructed and designed a diversion ditch that would be located just located along the west, turned around here, I apologize. Herdman Road is located here, parallel to Herdman Road. Above the tree line, I've designed a diversion ditch to intercept any water that would be potentially flowing down from upstream and diverting it around the site and discharging it to a level spreader to provide a non-point discharge to the existing well.
excuse me, Mrs. Good, before you ask another question, what section of the ordinance did you reference? 1208.4?
1208.4, I tried to, where it pertains to E5 and 9 pertain to water flow and.
Understood, thank you.
Now, when the place that you're talking about is not where I'm talking about that the water flows.
Chief would not be responsible for maintenance or operation of any facility that would not be located on this site or this property.
But would you be concerned about that water flow disrupting that facility since water will flow there?
Yes, and that's in my response, in my calculations that I perform, which Mr. Goodwin reviews, I need to account for any water that accumulates upstream that comes to this site to ensure that there's proper measures in place to divert it around the site so there's not an issue.
So like where Mr. Scott's property, where he owns the property, that's adjacent to this and the stone wall and all that, that's where I'm talking about.
Yes, I'm aware where
that'll be
you're
diverted away from there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now, so then anything pertaining to 1208.4C might not apply?
Ask your question and we'll get a response.
As pertaining to impairing the value of property and
Ask your questions.
how can this facility not impair the value of our property?
I can't answer that.
How can this facility not be seen as being incompatible with the character of the adjoining properties?
As stated in the ordinance, it is a permitted use through conditional use hearing here with the township, and they have in the ordinance deemed it as part of as a permitted use with the condition and approval of the supervisors.
I haven't been able to review the application, so I was hoping to ask some questions regarding the actual facility. How much of it will be above ground versus below ground?
The only below ground facilities would be the odorant storage tank, which is obviously below ground in a vault for safety purposes. And there's an odorant expansion tank and miscellaneous piping that goes underground as necessary.
So the dehydration part that you said has 100-gallon containers for, I forget what it was that you said, 400-gallon or 1,000-gallon or?
There are 6 350 barrel
Oh, okay, I see that.
tanks.
And they're above ground?
Yes, they are.
And is there some sort of overflow catch basin or?
Yes, all of those tanks are dual-walled tanks in a secondary containment. So essentially, there are 2 backups. If the internal portion of the tank is ruptured, there's a secondary containment. There's a space between the interior lining and the exterior lining of the tank that allows a volume of the contents to flow into, and then finally, if that were to fail, there is a perimeter secondary containment that consists generally of a berm or structure that's approximately 24 inches high that's lined with a membrane liner to capture any liquids that may come out of them.
And this is above?
And that's above it.
And you're not concerned that any of that water flow could potentially disrupt those
No.
tanks, right?
No.
And you said there will be a flare. Are there hazardous chemicals that'll be emitted, vented, or flared from the
No.
flare? Okay. And you might have started with this. How often will it be burning?
Steve may be able to better answer that.
And so I should ask again later. And will there be odor to the burn off?
There shouldn't be. The flare generally destructs any of the odorant that's being, the purpose of the flare is to destruct any of the vapor that is there and to burn up that gas.
So that's not a continuous flame?
No, that's just a periodic burning when the facility is replenished.
And is that irritating to the eyes or the throat or the skin?
I'm not familiar with that.
Do you know if it can cause asthmatic-inducing effects?
I do not know.
Are any of them, I'm going to ask this, are any of the chemicals known carcinogens that'll be emitted through that flame or through the hydration or the dehydration process?
No.
Will there be any exposure to methane or benzene, toluene, the formaldehyde? What sort of emissions will there be?
I am not by any means an air quality specialist. I can't answer that.
But any type of air emissions will be consistent with Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Standards criteria.
Right.
Right, but
That's who governs the air quality there.
okay, but that still doesn't tell me what actually is coming, what they actually are. So can you give me something that I could reference? The DEP regulations, or what could I reference so that I'd be able to see that?
Yeah, I can check into that and
Okay.
provide a response back to you.
Thank you. Is there constant evaporation into the air of the contents of those the dehydration tanks?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Are they constantly being emitted from that dehydration tank? The evaporation, whatever is coming, being evaporated?
I think any emissions that come out of the dehydrator in the process, those emissions are captured and sent to a thermal oxidizer. A thermal oxidizer basically is a catalyst that burns up 99.9% of the methane in those vapors and basically destructs all those pollutants. The thermal oxidizers are a best management practice and promoting the utmost air quality.
Okay. How many acres total? I know you said 2 for the pad, but total?
I believe 8.029 acres of easement.
And are any plans to include a compressor station in the future?
No.
And if Chief decided that they changed that and wanted to put a compressor station in, would they have to reapply, or would that
Absolutely.
You would have to reapply? Okay. So it's not a blanket approval for any future modifications
No.
or additions, you would have to reapply
Our
for each
approval
thing?
is set forth for the use as indicated on our plans as submitted.
Okay, and you had mentioned the buffer. What was the name of that plan that's included in? Is that if we wanted to review it, you had mentioned that the buffer and the lighting and all that was in a plan.
Landscape buffer?
Maybe she's referring to the project narrative.
Project narrative.
Is that something that we would be able to review also?
Yes, it's on file.
Yeah, it's on file with the township.
Okay. Do you know about how much traffic, once construction's over?
A pickup truck, a couple times a day is the general maintenance as the operator comes in and checks the facility. Vehicles larger than that, a stake body or tractor trailer would be intermittently, maybe 1 or 2 times a quarter to replenish the mercaptan as well as remove any of the water that's contained in the storage tanks.
And is the truck traffic going to basically be using the old highway road, or?
There's access to 309, obviously, from Old Tunkhannock and Herdman Road. I can't project which way that they would come in.
So it's not specified
No.
which? So there's not any real way of preventing a leak or an overflow from, if it were to escape the pool type things that you have developed for
Those containments are constantly monitored. Obviously, rainwater and things like that fill them up, and as part of the operator's daily presence on site, those things are noted and ensure that the adequate people are notified to come and empty that storage out to maintain the storage.
Would you be able to make it a point or a request that if we are to get, because it seems that generally when we do get these hard rains that water does become out of its banks or whatever, like I said, if you mind, would it be possible that at that point, that it be made a point that someone comes from Chief to review the water so that they know exactly what we're talking about? If we were to get like that sort of storm again, just to make sure?
As part of our erosion and sediment control plan and stormwater management plan and stormwater maintenance and operating plan, we are required to do inspections on our property and ensure that debris is clear and that no erosive conditions are occurring. Properties off-site or along the road above where we are, Chief cannot be responsible for.
No, I'm talking about when the water's actually flowing through that field, that someone come and see what we're talking about.
Yeah, so as I said, we are required to do inspections as required after an event, is how DEP regulates it.
So then you would see the ruts and things that it...
Exactly, and we are bound to fix and maintain that stuff.
So that would be after a storm like that, is general practice to come and see what had happened?
That's right.
Okay. And you stated that you had all the approved permits from the DEP and other mandated agencies. Is Susquehanna River Basin Commission one of them?
No.
And no motorized components, so there doesn't need to be any appropriate sound controls to minimize sound and the light diffusion. Is the wastewater in the dehydration, is that what's referred to as a slop tank?
Yes.
And the sediment or whatever you would call it's removed from those, that's not used for any purpose, is it? Like, it's not going to be used for dust control or any,
no,
like,
it's
salting roads?
It's classified as a residual waste. It is 99% water in there, and it is removed by an approved hauler with an approved disposal facility in the area.
Okay, so it's not like salt that it might be spread, okay. And you said the water quality will be monitored. Like, what I'm concerned about, not only our groundwater, but the water that flows along 309 down at the bottom, that if there were any sort of leak or, overspillage or whatever, that it would potentially make its way down there, that is a water source to people.
Any of the stormwater runoff from the site obviously is directed to our stormwater management basin. It's designed as an infiltration basin, and infiltration basins are in essence to do twofold. They improve water quality through promoting infiltration where the water percolates back down through the soil and the soil's natural characteristics clean that water before it enters back into the groundwater source. And that's how the stormwater basin is designed for the facility.
Okay.
Also through natural vegetation, wetland vegetation, those types of things are all filtering components of stormwater.
Let me see. And you said that the PPC, that's something that we would be able to have access to through the township?
Yes.
One more question. If for some reason, after this facility is put there, our water becomes, for some reason, harmed, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but would we have any sort of, would we be able to come to you and say, our water has changed since you've been here, or?
I would say consult your attorney, but I doubt that our project would have any impact on your groundwater.
Okay. That's all. I'd like to ask a few questions once. I hate to call you Steve, I forget his last name.
Okay, Mr. Scott?
Thank you.
I just had a question about if there is a leak. You were talking about you had some sort of arrangement where excess water would be drained off to the east. Any kind of leak or spill? I mean, if that leak would go down and be contained, is there any chance that could get into the soil? Because I have livestock right across contiguously. I wondered if that would harm vegetation in any way, shape, or form. Could it taint it? Could it alter it or change it to where the animals might get sick if in fact it did leak?
It could, however, the provisions and the response plan that we have should mitigate for any potential that there may be to that.
So I could be notified to maybe alter a pasture for a few weeks until something like that dissipated?
Yeah, I would hope that would never occur, and I don't foresee it occurring.
We would all hope that something would never occur, but just in case, and because you said, and one of the questions that Barb had asked was how often it was monitored or maintained or watched to make sure that there was no issues or concerns. And I guess you answered that with several times a day someone's there
Yes, yep.
and they monitor, and period, is there any time when it gets higher or lower, like is there a specific maintenance program where they would come and take that water away?
Yes, there is, yep. And it's routine and as observed by the operator daily.
And one of the questions I had was how close is the facility going to be to my property line?
Our easement is tight against your property line, however, the actual pad itself is set back, and don't quote me, I don't have my scale on this, but it's I would say approximately 175 feet to the edge of the pad.
From my trees?
Yep.
Okay, and then the other question I had, you talked about access to this facility being Herdman Road and 309. Now, are you familiar with the fact that the old highway road, access road that you're using crosses my property?
I'm
I
not
have
familiar
proof
with
that
the
it does.
construction, and
I would have to ask, that as opposed to tearing that property up, because it is mine, that you might use the Herdman access?
Herdman access will be only for the Mercaptan and dehydration facility alone, off of Herdman Road, the permanent access.
Okay, so you do...
Maybe some of
There's
the access you may be referring to right now could be due in part to the pipeline construction.
No, there's road, the property, the construction vehicles were going down across the street from the goods, right on Old County Line Road, right at the county line, going down on the opposite side of the stone wall. But the way the property line runs, that is on my property, and they were accessing that. And I don't want that torn up or having that as being a permanent roadway when it crosses my property.
I can certainly pass on your concern tomorrow to our construction personnel and our land agents to investigate that.
All right.
That's with regard to the pipeline.
That's regarding to the pipeline.
So you haven't started
We have
construction?
not started any construction or activities related to this station yet, as we are still waiting for our approval from the supervisors as well as Wyoming County Planning Commission.
Okay.
That's all, Mr. Scott?
The other question was decibels for noise. I mean, you said it's not going to be, is there like a decibel testing that was done there, 92 or 100?
We did the pre-construction testing. Just off the top of my head, it would be mid-January. It was within the last few months that we conducted it.
And was it, can you get me a copy of the report of the decibel? And then
The township has a copy of the report that I did here.
All right, no further questions from me.
Mr. Malik, any redirect?
Not at this time.
Any other witnesses?
Yes, I do. At this time, I'd like to call Steve Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton's already sworn in. Can you please state your name for the board?
Steve Hamilton.
And how are you employed?
I am the operations manager for Chief Chapin.
And what does an operations manager do? Can you tell the board some of your responsibilities and roles?
I basically take care of all the facilities within Pennsylvania, manage and oversee the operations, the daily operations, safety aspects of the operations, hire the operators and train them.
And how many such facilities are you in charge of in Pennsylvania right now?
Let me count them up here. Approximately 8 facilities.
And Mr. Hamilton, you have a great deal of experience in the natural gas industry, is that correct?
Yes.
And how long have you, can you tell the board perhaps some of your background, some of your past experience with the natural gas industry?
Yes, I started in the industry in 1984 with Conoco in Oklahoma with cryogenic gas plants, compressor stations, and pipelines. I then moved to Virginia with Conoco on a coal bed methane project in Virginia. Left their employment, worked as a consultant with an autonomy company that consulted to different producers in Virginia, Indiana, Tennessee, and Virginia, of course. And I left their employment with an opportunity with one of the people I was consulting with in coal bed methane, and then I came to Chief from that point.
So it's safe to say to the board that you have a great deal of experience being an operations manager and a great deal of experience in the natural gas industry, is that correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Hamilton, you're familiar with Chief's application currently pending before the Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
And you're also familiar with some of the proposed buildings and the uses of the buildings at the facility, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to bounce around some of the questions that may have been asked. Can you tell the board what the protocol for a response is at the site if something should trigger a response? What's the typical response? How does that operate?
Typically, we have satellite communications with the facility, which goes to our cell phones and to all the operators. We get an email, and we also have a 1-800 number that is in Texas, that they do monitor that facility as well, which they'll call us and verify that we got the alarm. I get the alarm, the operator will get it as well. He'll go out, or he or she will go out and take care of the problem and basically make sure that everything's normal operations before they leave.
And this is being monitored 24 hours, 7 days a week, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you mentioned that an operator will go out. Is Chief going to employ an operator within close proximity to this location? Yes. And what will that operator be responsible for?
The daily operations of the facility, make sure the tank levels are adequate to take any liquids that we get into the site through the pigging process. Make sure the daily readings are done on the facility that we record. Make sure the dehydration is working adequately. Make sure the site's secure. No leaks, nothing on the ground, that sort of thing.
And will the operator receive training?
Yes.
So he has to be a qualified individual?
Yes.
And that's consistent with the DOT standards, is
Yes,
that correct?
sir.
We also, Mr. Bryan was asked a question about a remote shutoff. Can you describe for the board what a remote shutoff is and if they'll be at this facility?
Sure. The facility will have a block valve on the inlet side of the station and on the outlet side of the station. In the event it has a fire, a high tank level, probably, I'm thinking this facility will have a gas monitor system. That facility will shut in. If it's a fire, it will vent the gas inside the facility at that point. For safety reasons, you don't want to have a fire and high pressure gas contained within the piping. So you would see that station vent to the atmosphere. Any other alarm, such as a high tank level, the facility would just block in and it would stay pressurized, but it'll be isolated from the system for any incoming gas.
But the system will have the capability of having a remote shutoff, if you will.
Yes.
And you mentioned some of a block valve. Can you tell the board maybe what the block valve is, or some of the other valves? If there's a slam shut valve and what that does?
The valve is a typical ball valve that we use in the industry. They'll be rather large. They'll be 24-inch ball valves, 600 series class ball valves. Well, 900 I would say on this line. The slam shut valve is a spring operated pneumatic over a spring. So the pneumatics keeps the valve open, and then when the system is activated on the ESD system, the gas is vented off of that diaphragm, and the spring will actually force the valve shut in a matter of seconds.
So those are important safety features that you'll have at the facility, is that correct?
Yes.
Will there also be sensors at the facility?
Yes, sir. We'll have fire detection. It works off of ultraviolet light. So if it sees a flame, it does activate the ESD system and initiates a call out.
And this is another safety feature that will be utilized at the site?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bryan was asked questions perhaps about the construction of the site, the length of time. I know you're not the construction manager at Chief, but do you have any idea with regard to the construction time frame?
Facilities such as this, I would estimate 2 to 3 months construction. Generally, if we're in a hurry, they might construct it faster, depending on weather.
Mr. Bryan was also asked about questions about traffic at the facility and whether there'll be an increased flow of traffic. Can you please tell the board how much traffic is expected at the facility after construction is completed?
After construction, you'll have a pickup, provided that's what the operator drives. Typically, it's a pickup. They'll visit the site at least once a day. They'll make the rounds. If everything looks fine, they'll leave. If they get called out, of course, they'll come out as many times that day as it's needed to take care of any call-outs. Depending on the amount of water we get in when we pig, which that'll be weekly, starting off to see the water that we get in with the pipeline. The tanks will need to be empty. That volume of contained liquid will probably be 2 semis, I would think, at a time. They might bring one day, one the next. So that'll probably be monthly, I would guess, without knowing the volume of water that we're getting in. The mercaptan, and it's volume-based as well, will more than likely be quarterly. You'll have a semi come in and with mercaptan, and they will connect to the tank and fill it up.
So overall, you would say that there would be a light amount of traffic at this facility?
Yes.
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis, yes. And one more thing we'll have is a small truck bringing, replenishing our glycol.
You had mentioned pigging the line. That's also known maybe for the board as line inspection.
Line inspection tool, maintenance tool. The pig does bring the water because it's a wet system that's coming into the facility. Condensation within the pipe, the line will fill with water, taking up space in the pipeline, which causes pressure drop and potential corrosion in the line, which we don't want. So to make sure your pipe's clean, you have to run what we call a pig, or an inline tool to push the water out. And currently we plan on doing that once a week.
So that's another safety feature that will be utilized at this facility?
Yes.
And any type, Mr. Bryan was asked about what happens to any type of the water that's used through the pigging process. Will that be removed off the facility?
Yes, it has to go to treatment.
And that's in accordance with both DOT and the state laws and regulations, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bryan was also asked about questions with regard to the odorant and the process of how the odorant is added. Can you tell the board how the odorant will be added?
Yes, sir. It's much like a propane system when you have a semi unloading propane. They'll hook up a liquid line off the truck that has a pump on it, and they'll actually pump the tank or the mercaptan into the odorant tank. They'll also attach a vapor return line to the truck. So it's a closed system when they fill the tank up.
One of the other last questions that was asked of Mr. Bryan with regard to the flare at the facility. Can you tell the board, A, what's the purpose of the flare, and then secondly, how often it will be utilized?
The flare is a function of the pump that pumps the mercaptan into the pipeline. It works off a differential pressure, so as the pressure is equalized between the supply and the driver of the pump, which is gas, odorized gas, the system will balance, and then you have to flare the little containment of gas that's odorized to the atmosphere. You have to burn it off to get the differential established so that the pump will continue to inject mercaptan.
And how often do you anticipate the flare being utilized at this facility?
Typically, they'll flare the gas. It takes about 5 minutes to burn off the contained gas in the expansion tank, and that could be once a month.
So it's not a continual flare up here?
No, sir.
I don't have any further questions at this time. Mr. Hamilton?
Mr. Hamilton, would you mind spelling your name for the record?
Hamilton.
Mr. Goodwin, any questions?
Yes. And you basically answered what we'd asked before. Fast-acting valves, slam-shut valves, remote control valves, we'll have them on the facility. Do you have any plans, maybe you don't know, but on the pipeline for redundancy, and how far back are they up the pipeline, down the pipeline?
Different parts of the pipeline are built under different DOT standards. From this point to Dallas Township, it'll be built to a Class 4 standard, which is every 2.5 miles you have to have a block valve. Upstream, I believe they're building it to a Class 2, which is, I forgot the exact spacing, but they'll be, based on DOT standards, they'll be per that standard on the spacing.
So, playing devil's advocate, and with the control and the remote control and the operational oversight, we all certainly assume we're not going to have issues, but should a valve on the facility fail on the downstream side, if it's 2.5 miles, there'd be 2.5 miles of venting of gas that would have to occur.
If a valve
release,
failed,
if there was a...
If the discharge or the outlet...
If there was a release somewhere on your facility and that the valve on that side of the facility were to fail, to shut down and block it in, the gas in the pipeline would have to release through
Well, there will be a check valve on the outlet of the station to keep it from backflowing.
Okay. You mentioned, so routine pipe inspection will be once a week,
Starting out, yes, sir.
roughly. Do you run any kind of smart pipeline inspection more every few years, something like that?
If we see a need, there will be one run. I've been here 3 years, almost 4 now. We haven't run, we've run one due to some contractor damage.
My understanding of the standard for that, the DOT standard is every 7 years, something like that would be the minimum that you'd have to run that. And the only reason, that's more of a pipeline question, but gives people the peace of mind knowing that at least the integrity of the pipeline is being...
If we're under that jurisdiction, part of the DOT, we'll have to comply with it.
And you did submit information on the tower and how that's going to be addressed per the zoning ordinance. But just for the record, it was mentioned several times that a tower is required. Isn't it true that a communication is required, but a tower is not required?
No, per the Transco agreement, they force us to put a tower. We'd rather not have it, but it's in the agreement with those guys.
Okay. And the flares, you explained them very well. This is a highly visible site from the highway. So a 5-minute flare, probably not a big deal. Is that going to only be a daytime operation?
Yes, sir.
Supervisors?
I have no question.
I know.
I see Mr. Scott has left. This is good. Any questions?
Yes, please. The 800 number that was mentioned, is that something that the public has access to if they had a question or had a concern?
Well, yes, ma'am, it's on all our line markers, it'll be on the sign to the facility. If you call it, they won't be able to answer any of your questions other than they'll refer you to me.
Or like to verify that you know something, that's basically all it would be for, is to verify that you knew that something was...
Correct. It's for the public to
concern.
call in, or any concerned party if they see a problem on the pipeline, such as a leak or something like that.
Okay.
Just to call.
All right. A couple of the questions that I had noted for you was, the response will be satellite and cell phones and operators. Do you mean the operators the ones that have the, that would be the people that would come and respond if there was a problem, or the people that are just there generally during the day?
The operators would be the chief employees that take care of the facility.
And I had another question for you. And I don't know if you'd be able to answer this. If you know how this facility cannot impair the value of our property.
I'm not a realtor, I couldn't answer that.
And, someone else had mentioned the term blowdown. Is that the same as burn off, or?
No.
And did I maybe miss that interpretation, or?
I guess it's a matter of interpretation. In my perspective, a blowdown would be when you have a pig come in and you need to depressure the pipe section that has the pig in it so that you can retrieve it. That would be a blowdown. And what was the other term?
Is that like a big event, or is that just,
No.
okay, that it would have been mentioned? I just happened to hear it and thought, and so the burning might be once a month at 5 minutes
That's an estimate. It's based on how much the pump runs, based on the volume that we're moving.
Is that,
Could be more or less.
is that usually the time where somebody becomes alarmed? Is that like when you start to smell Captain, or?
You shouldn't smell it, no ma'am.
No.
Because it's, we were heard before that that's what the flare's for, is to destruct the odorant.
So in the times when the construction of the facilities were starting to happen over in Dallas Township, and there was a concern because people had smelled gas, and it was because of some work that was being done down the line. Are you aware of what that was and why people might have smelled gas at that point? Like,
Well,
what if there's a standard practice that tends to happen, or
That would have been a Transco job, and I'm not aware.
of what that would have been that would have caused that? Okay. And are you aware if the burn-off is irritating to the eyes or the throat or the skin at the time that's
I would
happening?
have to assume no.
Okay. And do you know if it has any asthmatic inducing effects? Like if someone were to have asthma that lives right there?
I don't believe it does.
Okay.
We'd have to look at the MSDS on that.
The what?
Material safety data sheet.
And
that
is that
you can find online. anywhere.
online? Okay. Is that like a general thing, or you mean like your?
It's a general, it's a naturally occurring product that gas people use. You can find ethyl mercaptan on the web under.
Oh, I mean the MSD sheet. Is that like just a generic sheet that's used, or is that on the cheap website you mean?
No,
If I
it would
wanted
be
to look
out
at that.
just on the general web.
Okay.
If you wanted to review a MSDS sheet in general.
Okay. And are you aware, I had asked about a variety of different things, methane, benzene, the toluene or formaldehyde. None of those will be there, or?
Well, of
it's
course,
just-
methane will be there because
Well, yeah, that,
yes.
but,
The gas doesn't contain benzene.
okay, no benzene, toluene?
Shouldn't have any in it.
And
No.
formaldehyde?
No formaldehyde either,
Okay.
that I've seen in any of our gas analysis.
I had heard in the past of fugitive hydrocarbon emissions. Is that something that might be
Pardon?
present? Fugitive hydrocarbon emissions?
As such as,
It was just something that I
Methane?
heard in other hearings that people were concerned about, and I wasn't really sure what it was, but wondering if you did.
no. I
No?
haven't.
So just basically methane?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And,
Entrained in, mixed with the gas, it's saturated. So what we do at pressure, which would be line pressure, we introduce the glycol with the gas stream in what we call a contactor. It's a big tall vessel, and that absorbs the moisture out of the gas stream. After it's absorbed, we call it rich glycol. The rich glycol is returned to a reboiler, which is basically a boiler that heats the glycol up, it vapors off any water vapor, and at that same time, that works at atmospheric pressure. So we're boiling the water vapor off of or water out of the glycol. After it stays in the burner boiler area for approximately 15 minutes, we have to have retention time to vapor the water off in the reboiler. It's pressurized to a pump and it returns back to the contactor where it starts to cycle all over again. In general, that's how a glycol unit works.
okay. And, so there won't be a noise level, you said? Or will there be with that process? Is there any sort of decibel level or noise involved?
Well,
Low
sure,
frequency
you'll hear a
noise?
burner burning and
All the time, or?
it cycles. It's just like a heater in your house. As the temperature changes, it drops, it's got to maintain a certain temperature. So you'll hear and I'm not saying that from your porch, you probably won't hear it. If you're on location standing beside it, you'll hear the burner kick on.
Okay, but probably if we were to be across the road from Mr. Scott, he's the one that has the field that they're going through there, and we're across the street from him, we potentially wouldn't hear that.
I wouldn't think you would, no.
And if anything we were gonna hear, it would only be that. So there's no other sounds, okay. So is there a chance the tower won't be put there, or you said that it is
The
required?
tower for Transco,
Yeah, so
Yes,
that's there,
it'll-
so that's definitely gonna be there?
I guess that's a fair statement.
Right now, yes.
Okay. And the slop tanks are emptied. Could you just tell me again? It
Well,
depends on the amount, right?
It's based on our volume and the amount of water we get in.
But like initially, what were you expecting?
I would guess they'd be emptied once a month.
Okay.
It's really hard to pinpoint that until we get in operation.
Yeah. And the term high tank level, what does that refer to?
High tank level, well, that would be a tank that's full.
Just that needs to be emptied?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple questions for the township when we're done, if that's,
Okay, are you done
Protocol.
questioning here?
yeah,
Any redirect?
I
thank you.
do, just one quick question. Mr. Hamilton, you referred to the facility being constructed to Class 4 DOT standards. Is that correct?
That would be downstream of this facility.
And that's the highest level of DOT standard 4? That Class 4 is the highest
Yes.
level of safety?
Yes, it is.
I have nothing further.
Any other witnesses? Okay. Can we go off the record just for a second? Before we do the other testimony and if our engineer agrees to take questions, there's been one request so far for a condition to notify adjoining landowners in the event of an emergency. Do you see any problem with that condition on approval?
Who would notify? Chief would notify?
Chief would notify...
A list of property owners who wish to be notified that would be submitted here to the township?
Right.
If they get us the list, we would agree to notify them.
All right, let's go back on the record.
Tell her you lit one.
Yes,
Back
sir.
of the room.
Can I also say something?
Yes, sir. You need to get sworn in.
I just want to make a statement about the evacuation policy or notifying. Our fire company does have a policy.
Okay, why don't you just come forward, you can be sworn in, identify yourself, and we'll get you right on the record, and there won't be any issue.
You're going to swear testimony and give Mr. Basile will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Mr. Dodson, before you begin, would you say your name and spell your last name, please?
Jack Dodson, D-O-D-S-O-N. I'm fire chief from Conco, and we did meet with chief, and we were satisfied with what we talked about, but we do want to meet with him again because we have some questions for him. But we are putting a policy in the fire company. If there is anything that goes on with this gas facility, we are going to notify the neighbors. So everybody will be notified that we feel could be affected. So, we'll shut down the roads, we'll do whatever we need to do. That will be one of our emergency response plans. So, just want to let you know, and all our people in the fire company have had training on what we call LP gas. We do that about every 2 years, which is equivalent to natural gas. We haven't had any natural gas facilities, but all our people also have operations of hazmat. So, we think we have everything we need except for our gas meter. We need a gas meter. So, but I just want to let you know, we do have a plan in place. We have iPads in the ambulance, iPads in the trucks. We will know exactly what's going on.
Any questions for Mr. Dodson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Good, did you want to testify, or did you just want to ask our engineer questions?
I don't even know that it pertains to the engineer. It was about the application, the chief's application.
Okay.
We just never were able to review it, see it, anything.
I talked to the township secretary. We can go back off the record, please. I talked to the township secretary today. She said she got a request for records. Yesterday, she was not in the office. We don't have the facilities at the township to make copies of maps and things like that.
I'm not even really, interested in the map. I mean, basically, that's where we
Okay.
are. I'm just the application.
Yeah, well, you're certainly entitled to it.
I can
but
come and view it somewhere. I mean,
You
I don't
absolutely
have to
can come
have
and
the
view it, or
copy.
you can get a copy. It's just that your request came in when she was not in the office, and she hasn't had time to make a copy yet. She worked all day today, I know. because
Right,
I worked
yeah.
with her.
Yeah, I'm just asking that, at some point we would be able to meet and I just review it. Then I don't need copies of maps and,
Okay, and you were able to get a copy of the zoning ordinance off the website?
yeah.
Do you need a hard copy of that?
The part that I had, the difficulty with was the actual compressor station, metering station,
Okay.
all the wording to that maintenance facility part. That I found other things, but not that so much.
Okay, that would be in the most recent amendment, but again, come April 14th.
Yeah. Now, what I had, as part of, what part I wanted to play in trying to find out things was also, to voice my opposition, of course.
Okay,
But
well, do
at
you want to
this point-
testify? And
Well, I don't know, is that considered testifying or?
in order for the board to make a decision based on your input, you have to do it under oath.
When you're on the road.
You're under oath, but you'd be
Yes.
back on the record.
Is that what that would be considered? If it's basically my opposition
Well, I
based
assume
on
you want to
the
testify,
ordinances.
you mentioned property values a few times, things like that you want to testify to?
Yeah,
I can't tell you what to do.
Right.
You have a choice, you have an option to testify.
it's just a matter of stating it.
Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Okay, and you're already sworn in?
Yes.
Could we go back on the record?
I find that, I've always believed that we should be energy independent, and I wasn't opposed to any responsible drilling, and I wasn't opposed to pipelines and my neighbors allowing gas lines put on their properties. This, though, we weren't really prepared for this, because not having known about the first meeting, we weren't made aware of any of this until the 16th. Well, I think the letter's dated 16th of February, so we haven't had much time to really absorb this. And so my initial response was to ask you to oppose the application for the conditional use permit. And I was citing several sections of the Eaton Monroe zoning ordinance, 1208.4C.
Wait, excuse me, I'm not as fast as Mr. Wozniak. 1208.
0.4C, and I don't know that I'm saying this properly, but E, I guess it would be called sections 5, 7, and 9, and F. And I don't know that you want me to read those since they're coming from yours, or do you, or?
Whatever you would like to do.
Well, I might as well. The proposed, C is the proposed use at the proposed location shall not result in a substantial or undue adverse effect on adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood. I wasn't really concerned about the traffic conditions or parking, public improvements, public sites, or right-of-way. Just property values and other matters affecting the public health, safety, and welfare as they now exist. And then also other factors that I was hoping that would be considered would be the adequacy of stormwater and drainage facilities, adequacy, type, and arrangement of trees and other landscaping constituting a visual and or noise buffer between the applicants and adjoining lands, and a special attention to the adequacy and impact of structures, roadways, landscaping, and areas with susceptibility to ponding, flooding, and or erosion. And F pertains to being allowed to provide conditions of approval. If in the case that you were to give approval, that I might be able to submit some conditions that perhaps you would consider. And so that's where I got that from, section F.
Okay, so anything else?
I did make my point about the heavy rainwater, and that's basically what I was most concerned about, other than what might be emitted in the air for breathing to my family, since we're in such close proximity to the facility. And those were basically my concerns.
Okay. Do you want to state your proposed or requested conditions of approval?
Originally, not knowing if I was going to be given the opportunity to ask questions, it was that the questions be answered. So that's part of what I had included, that answers to all the attached questions to Township and Chief be answered, which I think we pretty much covered tonight. A copy, and we just talked about this, a copy of the conditional use application, which I'll make a plan to visit with you maybe and just review it that way. That Chief provide evidence of approved permits from the State Department of Environmental Protections. The one thing that wasn't mentioned that had been done was the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. Is that not something that's required normally? Okay. We covered the appropriate sound controls, the light. We covered that the wastewater not be used in any form of dust control or to spray roads or anything. That the surrounding water quality be monitored regularly for leaks, overflow from groundwater, as well as monitoring it for the body of water running parallel to 309 if there were any kind of leaks or spillage.
I'm sorry, was that monitor the stormwater?
That the water quality be monitored if there were any kind of leaks or spillage noted. And I believe that we were already told that the air quality is monitored. That was one of my concerns. Also, that the pollution preparedness contingency plan be provided to the public. That the emergency response plan be provided and explained to all parties, which I believe I asked if we could have a copy of that, so if we have that covered. And that was basically what I was hoping for.
Okay, can we go off the record again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got condition evidence and permits. I don't think that's a problem, that's a requirement. Condition that the wastewater not be used for any repurposing. Just, it's disposed.
That's already covered by DOT.
Okay, so already covered, so no need for condition. That water quality is monitored in the event of a leak. Any discussion on that?
In the event of a leak, our plans go into effect, right, with DEP monitoring, state monitoring. So that's already...
Already taken care of. Okay, air quality we discussed is already being taken care of. We discussed that the plans and other submissions are public records, material data safety sheet. What they are is I think the EPA or somebody publishes them, but for every compound essentially there's a data sheet that tells you what its components are and some other information regarding that.
Was that referred to as an
Yes.
NEP or? Is that what? An MSDS.
Did I say that wrong? MDS? Yeah. MSDS.
There will be MSDS sheets for each material contained on the facility as required as part of the SPCC plan as well.
Okay, so that plan that's on copy at the township will have those sheets?
That's right.
Well, I think that's what I was unclear about when I was trying to ask you that, if that was a generic like form that was on the internet or if that pertained
No,
specifically to your...
there will be MSDS sheets specific
Okay.
to the materials contained on site and available.
You were asking me, are we off record?
Rough record.
You were asking me about the hazards of breathing vapors off of Mercaptan.
Yeah.
I don't have one with me, but if you want to research it, that's why I'm saying you can go on the internet and type MSDS ethyl mercaptan
Okay.
and research it.
Okay.
I don't believe there's any issues like that, but MSDS will tell you.
Okay.
Okay, so other conditions you just mentioned, there's no need to condition approval upon them because there are already requirements. Okay? With the input from the fire chief, is there any need for additional notification? When they're notified, he indicated he will notify all the neighbors and he'll do road shutdowns and whatever else is necessary. Are you still requesting additional notification?
I still would. I would like to be, if possible, notified simultaneously with the emergency response.
Okay, can you discuss that point?
Since we're off record, actually, you'll be the one probably notifying the emergency people, if it's at night and a relief valve's popping, or a nuisance noise, or a fire. We won't be there. We'll have a camera there. We rely on the public to help out in
But
those
like,
instances.
say your remote system notifies you of something and it's a case where you would notify first responders, at that point, that's when I was hoping to, rather than waiting for a first responder to then notify us, if it would be part of the protocol to notify the neighbors.
If we ESD and there's a fire, unfortunately, that might happen, hope not, that station's gonna blow down and you will hear it, and it'll probably, if you're asleep, it'll probably make you get out of bed, of course. And you'll see a fire, you're naturally gonna call 911. So in that instance, you would actually be notifying it before, we would just know, hey, we had a fire alarm. We know the station's ESD, but we don't know how big the fire is. We just know one of the sensors picked up a flame.
Is that common?
Common as,
Explosions?
no, oh, no,
Okay.
I wouldn't work around it if it was that, like that. I like myself too much. Yeah.
Can we go back on the record? Based on the off-the-record conversation, any of the parties want any testimony on the record or want to make any statement on the record concerning that off-the-record conversation? No? Okay. Did you say you did or did not have questions for our engineer?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think the only question I had that pertained to the township was reviewing the application, so we are.
And we got your
covered
request,
that.
it's certainly, you're certainly welcome to it. It was just a matter of how we can get it to you. You know.
My other questions had to do with like notification, like how it was determined who was notified and, but I think we covered that too, so.
It's state law and the ordinance. Who got written notice, where things were posted, and when and where advertised. Okay. Anything further?
If we can go off the record for a second.
Sure.
Ma'am, you had expressed some concern about your water and testing. Would you be agreeable to have Chief come and test your water now before construction begins at the facility to get a baseline for us?
Sure.
Sure.
If we can go back on the record and just point out that Chief has requested of the neighboring property owner a request to go ahead and test the water before construction would begin at this facility, and she has consented to, they have consented to such water testing.
Anything else? Okay, at this time, the supervisors will adjourn to deliberate. They will likely have a decision tonight, but I will issue a written opinion as required by the MPC and circulate it between the applicant and the parties. Anybody else interested, it's a public document. It can be reviewed at the township. And we have a short recess to deliberate, and we'll be back.